said two human beings.
As a hypothetical.
Right, but what? That has got nothing to do with what I said.
Because only God and a human, the attribute connection cannot be made.
But you still have not addressed what I've said. So firstly, I want to, in your analogy that you said is purely hypothetical, obviously you was giving this as some kind of criticism of what I said. So in what way are these two human beings connected to what I said in your hypothetical situation?
The two human beings would be, as an example, two beings, let's not say human beings. One being is God and one being is a human. And you're saying these two can be the same as in an attributable way, the same way the Quran, the production of
Are you using the word person and human being in your argument interchangeably?
Being, like just as God is a being.
My question is, firstly, if you don't understand a term, I'm happy to explain it. But are you saying, in your analogy, are you using the words human being and personhood interchangeably?
I'm trying to use being.
But I need to clarify. Are you saying that every human being has a personhood, and therefore personhood and human being are interchangeable?
In
right.
a way, a human being is
a
being.
Okay, so let me clarify something, because
like
this is.
They have a will.
So let me clarify something. Let me clarify something. Yes, it makes sense. Let me clarify something to you, because what I'm trying to point out to you is that when we Christians talk about Christ having two natures, we only see one person in that Christ with the two natures, right? It's like a coin. You know, if I've got a gold coin, it has two faces. When you look at one face, it doesn't look like the other face. When you flip it around and you look at the other face, it doesn't look like the first face. But the coin, the gold, goes from one face to the other face and fills both completely. When it comes to the incarnation, it's the person of Christ is like the gold. It fills both faces. But the human face and the divine face never touch, except in the person, right? So what happens, so if I scratch one face, I do scratch the gold, but what I don't scratch is the other face. The other face is totally untouched,
okay, I understand.
Right?
So now, bear with me here, okay? So a being has a will,
Yeah.
right? So the difference, I'm gonna, for the sake of comparison, because you brought it up first.
I think though you're trying to
Just let me finish.
but you're not sticking to the.
God.
You
can criticize it and
yeah.
return. If I'm diverting, I'm not trying.
I feel you're moving on to a different part of the argument. Yeah.
It's the same thing. So a being has a will, right? For us, God has a will.
Yeah.
And when you say human being,
yeah.
automatically has a will.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So now you have two wills.
Correct.
In the Quran, in the example of Quran and God,
yep.
Speech cannot have a will. It's not possible.
Yep.
Your speech is a production of you. It's not a will.
Right.
So that's why speech can be an attribute of God, and they're the same.
Right.
You can't divide them.
So
but here, when you have a human being and you have God, and
yep.
they both have a will.
Yep.
This is dividing.
Firstly, hold on.
Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, so I'm going to address it completely. I'm going to address it completely. So firstly, right, going back to the analogy of the coin, right, the human nature.
The coin doesn't make sense.
No, it does.
Look.
You see, if you just interrupt me again, right, then I'll just start interrupting you, and then you'll say, but let me finish. So let me finish. Yeah. Don't insist that you can finish, but then don't let me finish. Doesn't work like that, right? So in terms of the analogy, we Christians assert that Christ has two wills, a human will and a divine will. Going back to the analogy of the coin, because remember what we're talking about is the fact that you can affect one nature, but it doesn't affect the other nature. That's actually what we're talking about. And so, if using the analogy of the coin, remembering that the gold of the coin represents the personhood of Christ, and the two faces represent the natures of Christ, his divine and his human nature, if I get a sharp knife and I scratch one side of that coin, so I totally mutilate the image, right? Both the gold, i.e. the person, and one face, i.e. one nature, has been affected by the scratching. But if you flip the coin over, the gold, that is the one person, and the one face, that is the divine nature, is unscratched, untarnished, and looks perfect. Okay, so my analogy does stand up. What's the problem is that you haven't engaged with the analogy. It's all right. What's happened is you've totally ignored the analogy. But here's where your double standard appears. Because I said to you that you have exactly the same concept in your religion. But you said, no we don't, it's different. Because if I take a Quran and I stand on it, or I spit in it, or I flush it down the toilet, you would be angry that I've desecrated a book, and you'd be right to, because that's rude and it's wrong. But you wouldn't say that I have been able to damage the divine word of Allah. So you're trying to create a double standard where you say that it is impossible for the divine and the human natures to sit together, that one happens to one nature but not the other in Christianity. You're saying that's impossible, but you're saying it can happen in Islam, and I simply reject your double standard. If you can have that rule in Islam, we can have that rule in Christianity. And to the point, we're not copying Muslims. Christians had this belief centuries before Muslims. Muslims borrowed our understanding of the incarnation to talk about their Quran.
So the issue is, the reason I'm not addressing the coin, because it does not make sense.
Explain why it doesn't make sense. No, you didn't. You interrupted. But notice you're protesting. I told you you'd protest if I interrupted you.
But I didn't interrupt you.
But you did interrupt me.
I said I understand.
I had to insist upon you not interrupting. Do you see how being interrupted is annoying? Does that mean you won't interrupt me going forward? When I speak next time, will you not interrupt me? Right, so here's the end of my interruption, right? Saying that my analogy does not make sense is not... Saying my analogy does not make sense is not the same as a refutation. Give a refutation of the analogy. Go on.
Okay, so I understand we can't interrupt each other. I understand.
Thank you.
I'll try my best. So, yeah, I mean, so when I said the coin doesn't make sense, I was gonna go and explain it. But
okay.
You kind of interrupted me.
Oh, is that wrong? If you don't interrupt me, I won't interrupt you.
Okay, so the reason is because I find it very, what's the word? Like, I find it within myself, I can already object to the fact that you can't fuse two wills into a coin. A coin has nothing to do when you look at it in wills. Now, first, I want to address your point that that our concept of the Quran is similar to your concept, which is completely false. And I've already explained this to you multiple times, but you seem to miss the point. I gave you a logical example of human beings, okay? When a human being produces speech, that speech does not have a will. It's an attribute of that human being. Does that make sense? To be honest, okay.
I'm listening.
I'm starting to forget now, but when a human being produces speech, that speech is an attribute of that human being. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
Now, when you have two things that have wills, those things, my argument is, cannot be fused together. And so you have to show me how you can have two beings that each one has its own will, can be fused together in a coin, like the example that you gave me. Now that's up to you to show me. For me, the Quran, it's a production of speech. So when you produce speech, it's an attribute of yourself, and it's not a will or a being. That's why it has nothing to do with the Christian concept, where you have two beings that you're trying to fuse together. Does that make sense?
Does make sense.
So now, I don't
agree with it. So firstly,
you don't have to agree with it. It's my opinion.
So firstly, if the human person fully fills a human nature, right, then that means it possesses a human will.
Yes.
If it fully possesses a divine nature, it also possesses a divine will. The unity can't be in the natures, and it isn't, and we don't claim that it is.
What about the wills?
The wills are in the wills are not united in the natures, because that would entail the contradiction you're talking about. So we're not saying that the wills are united in the nature.
Okay.
right? We're saying that they are united in the person. Going back to my analogy, which does make sense, and simply saying it doesn't prove it. The gold represents the person. The gold goes fully to the first face and goes fully to the second face. Each of those natures is fully possessed of the person. So it has a human will, that Christ has a human will, and he has a divine will. But you said that the Quran does not have a will. But let me finish. You're interrupting. Remember what we said, what we agreed? So your own hadiths state, right, listen, bear with me, on the day of resurrection, according to your hadiths,
Testify for you on the day of the judgment.
It says this about your Quran. Abdullah ibn Amir reported the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said that on the day of resurrection, yeah, the Quran will say, "O Lord, I prevented him from sleeping during the night, so let me intercede for him." So the Quran is speaking to Allah and interceding to Allah on behalf of the believer. So the Quran is interceding, it has a will, and it is speaking back to Allah. That is what your hadith say.
But don't move on to another point. Let me answer that hadith.
Oh, no. You don't get to control the conversation. I remember. No, hold on. It is on film that we started talking about spirituality and about motives. And I said, it's a shame you're wanting to move the conversation on from this topic. So you don't get to control the conversation. It is a free-flowing conversation. Go on. So reply to this. Yeah.
So I just want to get it clear. It's okay, like, because you're also moving from point to point. So we're just having a.
That's fine. So you can't tell me not to move on.
Well, it's because I just want to have the opportunity to respond to the hadith. Is that not fair?
Go on.
So if you want to say no, and then we can.
No. I'm just saying you don't get to dictate the conversation.
I don't want to dictate. I just want
So
to have
great.
a normal,
Then let's do that.
But I asked you to let me respond to the hadith. That's
Yeah.
basically
Go
what I
on.
was trying to do.
Go on.
So basically, you have to understand what the hadith means. It's not that the Quran itself will testify. Do you know what will testify? Your recitation of the Quran. The fact, how does the Quran keep you up from sleeping? It's because you stayed up and recited the Quran. So what will actually testify for you is the action of you reciting the Quran and doing good deeds instead of sleeping.
Okay, can I reply to that?
Your recitation testifies for you.
Can I reply to that?
It's not the physical book comes on the day of it doesn't have its own will.
Can I reply to that?
Your own, yeah, you can, but can I just...
Yeah, you land your point. And notice I'm letting you land your point.
Well, and I told you can respond. I
Go
did
on.
say I'm going to move on to another topic and
Go on.
not let you respond.
Yeah.
So your recitation of the Quran is what will testify for you. It has nothing to do with let's say, you can't understand it in the way of like the physical book will come on the day of judgment and say, oh, I like, what's your name?
Bob.
Nice to meet you, Bob.
Nice to meet you, bro.
So it can't come on the day of judgment and say, I like this guy Bob and I want him to go into heaven. That's not what it means. What it means is that Bob, as a Muslim, he stayed up in the night and recited the Quran. Because of his actions testify for him.
Okay.
That's what it means.
Can I reply to that?
That's what we understand, and that's what the majority of scholars say.
Can I reply to that?
And we say this hadith all the
Right,
time.
now I'm going to reply to
Yeah,
that, right? The first problem with your argument is that is not what the text says at all, right? That's the first problem with your argument. Do not interrupt me. The first problem with your argument is that is exactly not what the text say. Exactly what the text say is that the Quran will intercede for you. It does not say the action of reciting will intercede for you. It says the Quran. So that's the first problem. The second problem is if what you're saying is true, then that means that Muslims or Muhammad himself has labeled an action, a human action, as a divine attribute. He has called a human action a divine attribute. Why? Because the text says the Quran will intercede for you. No, do not interrupt. I literally repeated it twice, but I will repeat it a third time. The second problem is that if your argument is true, then Muhammad has committed shirk because he has given the divine attribute its name to a created action, if your argument is true, which is shirk. Thirdly, the other problem is that it also introduces another shirk, because if the action of recitation, right? If the action of recitation of the Quran, right, it means that you are reciting the Quran, but all of these things are created, then you have something that is created that is like something that is uncreated. Because, why? Because Allah's speech is uncreated, and Allah is not like anything that He has created, including all of His attributes, but your recitation is created, and your recitation is an exact facsimile of the divine speech, which means that you have something that is uncreated looking exactly like something that is created, i.e., I can say, recite the words of the Quran, and that means I am reciting the words of Allah, so my created speech is an exact representation of Allah's uncreated speech. So your first problem is that is exactly not what the text says. You said exactly something that the text did not say. Your second problem is that if that is true, then the name of something created is being given the name of something uncreated. And the third problem is that something that is created is exactly the same as something that is uncreated. Your speech and uncreated speech.
So if I miss a point, can you just tell me?
Those are the 3 points, yeah.
Because I tend to forget a lot, so.
Yeah.
And also you said a lot, so I need to like stay in touch. But
okay.
So let me just try to remember. Okay, so here's something that I've forgotten about. One of the scholars said that when you recite God's speech, the Quran, your recitation is not the attribute of God. Your recitation is the repeat of the speech. So let's say, for example, you said something and I repeat what you said. What I repeated is not you saying that exactly. So it's not your attribute. It's my repeating that attribute. So now it becomes my production of speech. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does.
And so how we view it in the Quran, in the context of the Islamic discourse, is that when you repeat the words of God, it's a good deed. You're doing it, you get a good deed for repeating it.
Yeah.
And so what that hadith means is that your repeating of the words of God and applying it in your life and staying up at night and reading the Quran, that will come to testify for you on the Day of Judgment. You're viewing it in a literal sense of like, oh no, the Quran itself will come and vouch for people and things like that. But you're missing a core part of the hadith. And if we go back to it in the text, I'll explain it to you exactly in the specifics of it, is that it even says that it's because it kept him up from sleeping. Now, you have to ask, how did it keep him up from sleeping? Did the Quran itself come down as a book and talk to the guy as a, like, you know how Jesus comes down and says, no, it's the person willingly chose to recite the Quran, repeat the words of God to get the good deeds, and that prevented him from sleeping. So, i.e., his actions are the ones that resulted in that vouch or in that testification that he should be saved from the hellfire. So his actions is what is witnessing for him on the Day of Judgment, not the actual Quran coming down as a person. You get it? So that's in relation to the hadith himself. What was your second point?
So let me just come back on that point. So the point is, firstly, what's identified is the Quran. It doesn't say the action. Doesn't say the action.
You get it from the when it says that kept him up from sleeping.
Yeah, let's just look at some hadiths, right?
Can I take a look at
the second point is that if what you're saying is true, then something that is created is being called by something uncreated. The Quran.
One more time.
Something created is being called by the name of something uncreated. So a created thing, i.e. the action of recitation,
you mean the action is being called?
It is being called the Quran.
Okay.
And the Quran is uncreated.
Yeah.
Right? So is it shirk to call something created by the names of the uncreated?
One more time, the last question.
Is it shirk to call something created by the names of something uncreated.
So as in calling the action the Quran.
Yes.
See, you're misunderstanding it and thinking that the Quran itself is the action. The Quran itself, the production of speech.
That's not the question. Your argument is that something created is the one interceding back to Allah.
Yeah, his
Right?
actions.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is it right to call something created by the names of the uncreated?
But the thing is, the action itself is not being called the Quran.
It is literally being called the Quran. Yeah, I'll show you. It's literally being called the Quran.
So I recall the hadith.
I don't even know why you're arguing the point. I literally read it to you. You heard it say, it says, read the Quran, right? So you're reading the Quran, for it will come on the day of resurrection interceding for its companions, right? Now, the point is, you're being told to read the Quran, right? Because the thing that you're reading...
Wait, one more time.
Let me finish.
Can you go back?
You're interrupting me.
How are you, sir?
You're interrupting me. Unfortunately, we get these hecklers. You've just best to ignore them, right?
What did he say?
They just interrupt. It's just a thing that they do. So, in terms of this Quran, it says, look, right? It says in Sahih al-Muslim 804, narrated by Abu Umamah al-Bahila, said, I heard the Messenger of Allah say, read the Quran, for it will come. This is my point.
Is reading the Quran.
Right, listen, and
It's
this
not
is.
the Quran itself.
Is it right to call something created by the names of the uncreated?
Okay, can I respond?
I'm asking you that
Ask
question.
me the question as soon as I make just one 10-second point. Read the Quran, for it is reading the Quran, not the Quran itself.
Now answer the question I actually asked.
Understand?
No, now answer the question I actually asked. You see, you're not even listening, bro.
You said
I'll
if
say it again.
Is created, can you call
I'll
it
say it.
uncreated? I know your question.
So the
but it doesn't
Quran,
make sense.
so the thing that
thing is reading the Quran.
Yes, and it's been called the Quran.
Read
Because the
Quran,
Quran,
it
the
is reading the
Quran, listen, fasting and the Quran will intercede for a
Right,
person on the
yes.
day of resurrection.
Are you going to say fasting?
Are
is
you
a
now
means-
going to answer my question?
Yeah, I will answer. But you got to give me. You gotta
So
let me
answer
respond.
my question.
Okay, can I respond now?
Do you know what my question is?
Yes.
Repeat my question back to me.
Can you call a created being uncreated? Is
Answer that question.
Okay, but before I answer it, I have to establish the context of which you're trying to ask that question, because it's very deceiving, by the way. Fasting and the Quran will intercede for you on the day of judgment. Let me finish.
No, you've interrupted me consistently. You don't get to insist on letting me finish. No, you don't get to do that when you interrupt me.
Are you going to let me respond?
But you interrupt me.
Okay, but I would like to
No,
respond.
but you interrupt me, so you can't say that.
So, well, I'm asking for
But
your
you
permission to speak.
interrupt
If
me.
you don't want to give me
So what I'm
Can I
saying though,
fucking-
so
can I-
listen to my argument again, because no, listen to my argument again, because you haven't heard it. Yes, you can respond when I've restated the argument, because your argument is, and this is the difference between listening and responding, is that you're saying that the action is what intercedes for you, right? So taking that position, my question to you is it right to call a created thing by the names of the uncreated? That's the question.
Prophet did, and yes, you
It literally does it right here.
Yeah, are you gonna-
Fasting
but
and the
you-
Quran will intercede for a person.
I have to ask, will you let me respond?
Yeah, go on,
Can I
respond.
Get like at least 30 seconds?
Yeah, but you interrupt me, bro, and like when.
I still need to work on that.
Yeah, you do
I'm
need to
new
work
the
on that.
dialogue.
You do need to work on that. But go on.
Perhaps in the future, if we talk,
Yeah,
we'll be
go
better at
on.
it.
Yeah, hopefully, go on.
So it seems mind-boggling that you're like fasting and the Quran. Do you think fasting is like? Do you think it's a will? Like it's some kind of being?
That's not the question.
Let me finish. Okay. So, like literally, when the Hadith says fasting and the Quran, it's literally clear what it means by that. Fasting is an action, and the Quran, i.e., your recitation of it.
That's still not the question.
That's what. What do you mean that's not?
You've still not answered my question.
Your question is, can you call a created thing uncreated?
So you do know
My
the question.
answer to your question is no, you can't do that. But
Thank you.
That is not what the Prophet is doing. And
Right.
That is the point.
So now let me
The
read.
Prophet is not calling the action uncreated.
No, I didn't say that.
Yeah, you did.
No, I didn't.
You said when he said
I did
the
not
Quran,
say.
You're saying he's calling the Quran will come as the action, and that's uncreated. That's
No,
what you're implying.
no. What I'm
That's not
no.
true.
What you stated just then is not
Fasting
what I
on the
stated.
Quran, as in fasting, you fasting on Ramadan.
I just-
Quran, as in you reciting the Quran, will testify for you.
Do
as in your
you?
action.
So you don't believe you can call something created by the uncreated?
Yeah, like I can't call you. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right.
I can't call you an uncreated being. Obviously, you're a human being. You're
No. I didn't say that. You see, you subtly changed my question. No. You're subtly changing my question, and so that means that you don't want to engage with my question because you're changing my question.
Well, that's what you.
What I said was, can you call something that is created the names of the uncreated?
Like the Quran is not a name of uncreated.
Right.
You understand that?
Okay,
Like,
so let's look at this.
When I say the word Quran,
Let's look
is
at
it
this.
Uncreated,
Let's
that
look at
word?
this.
That doesn't make any sense.
So let's look at this, right? So,
But yeah, no, you can't do that. By the way.
you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Not the name. Not you can't say something is uncreated when it's created.
Is the Quran the speech of Allah?
Yeah, the speech itself is uncreated, not the word Quran.
So the speech of Allah is uncreated,
Yes.
and what do you call the speech of Allah?
We call it the book. We call it the Quran.
You call the speech of Allah the Quran. So you've got a name for
Yeah.
the speech of Allah,
So if I call this the Quran, I can say the Quran is created.
right?
Does that make
So no,
sense?
hold on. Are you following my
When you
logic?
refer to the
Now
speech-
notice you're interrupting. Notice you're interrupting.
You know, when I
Yeah.
reply to you, you're getting your answer.
Okay, so the point is, right, now let me speak without you interrupting. Let's see if you can do better like you said you wanted to.
I will
Right?
try my best.
You try your best, please. Yeah?
Because you get these urges.
You try your
I can
best.
respond to a
You try your best, okay? Because you protest every time I interrupt you. So
Well, try to be
the
more
speech,
patient with me,
the speech of Allah, you call the Quran. The speech of Allah is uncreated. That means the speech of Allah, which is uncreated, has a name, the Quran.
But the name
But
isn't
you're saying that when Muhammad said, fasting and the Quran will intercede for you, you're saying that the Quran that is referred to here is the created action.
yeah.
But the created action has a name. According to Muhammad, he's calling it the Quran.
Right.
But that is the name
And so-
of the uncreated
Right,
divine speech.
And so
And you said
Yeah.
that you couldn't do that because it was shirk.
Yeah, you can't call something that's created uncreated.
Thank you.
However,
No, I didn't say that. You've changed what I've
but-
said again.
But the name is fine.
What
You
I've
can
said.
do that with the name.
So you can use the
Here's
names
my
of
point.
divine
Here's why.
speech for
Yes,
created
here's why.
things. Okay.
Because someone, a layman, can come and say that this fence is the Quran.
Yeah. And is
If he
it?
does that, right?
And is it?
It doesn't. When we say then we can say that his reference to the Quran is created. That there is no shirk there.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the Hadith. What the Prophet meant by the Quran, and it's especially clear when it's referenced and the fasting.
Yep.
He's talking about the action.
Yep.
So you can call the action by that name. It's not problematic. Just if I, as a Muslim, call this, I want to call this fence Quran.
Yeah.
That's not shirk.
You don't think that's shirk?
No, because
Okay.
the name itself is not the speech itself.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
One
One
second. Okay. No. I think
understand that?
I do get what you're saying, but I don't think you're fully engaging with what I'm saying. But let's move on to the third point.
But as long as you
Let's move on. I do understand your argument, but I don't think your argument properly addressed what I said. I think you ignored what I said.
Well, I think I addressed the hadith and what you
Well,
said.
people can make their own mind up. So let's move on to the third point. The third point is that it says, and bearing in mind I'm engaging with your response to my initial argument, right? The third point is that it says fasting and the Quran will intercede for you. Now, dealing with your argument, that when it says the Quran, it's not talking about the divine speech, it's talking about your recitation,
Yeah.
right? So I have engaged with what you have said. The problem with your argument is that now what you're saying is something that is created is like one of the attributes that is uncreated. Why? Because your speech, when you recite the Quran, right, so long as obviously you're reciting it perfectly, people will say that is the speech of Allah.
It's not. It's the repeating of the speech of Allah.
Which-
it itself is not.
But the point is, is it not the words of Allah?
When you, Bob, say something and I repeat it,
Yes.
what you said is not it's my saying is not a production of
Okay, I'll prove my point with a living example.
you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I will prove my
It's the
point.
same thing with the
I'll prove
Quran.
my point with a living example. Okay? Repeat exactly what I say back to me. Your jumper is green.
Okay.
Repeat it back.
What? My jumper is green.
No, I didn't say that.
Your jumper is green.
You're struggling with this.
Your jumper is green.
Right. So my words and your words are exact reflections of one another, are they not?
Yeah, but it's not.
Right.
It's not.
So
my
if
speech is
you,
not a production of your speech.
so my point, but you've got to listen to the point I'm making. You have just demonstrated on camera that our speech is an exact mirror image. Let's do it again. Your jumper is green.
Okay.
Repeat back. No, repeat back. Repeat back.
Your jumper is green.
Right.
And I say that.
But the point is, our two speeches, even though yours is an attribute of you. No, you're interrupting always. Right? But you complain when I interrupt you. It's a shame that I have to keep teaching you this lesson.
It's okay. We're interrupting each other.
That's fine. And it's good humoured, so I don't really mind it. But my point is, you've just demonstrated that our language is an exact mirror reflection. So if you're saying that I'm going to finish. No, 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 I am going to finish. So the Quran, if you're saying that when it refers to the Quran, it's referring to the created speech, well, that created speech is an exact mirror image of the uncreated. But the Quran says that there is nothing in creation that is like unto him, and when it says that, it means his attributes as well as his essence. So now address the point.
So when let's say you're a divine being, okay?
I'm not.
And you just hypothetical situation.
Let's just say God is a divine being. Let's just use God.
Yeah, but,
Let's just use God.
Okay.
When Allah speaks.
Okay, so God as a being,
Yes.
when he produces speech, that's
Yes.
his attribute.
Yes.
Just because I repeated that speech doesn't mean my speech has now become a divine attribute of God.
I never said that.
Does that make sense?
You see, you're
That's
still
what
not listening.
that's what
I
you're-
did not
that's-
say that.
That is what you were trying to imply.
No, I didn't. You see,
And
you're
so
not
that's
listening.
why
No, I
my
didn't say
recitation
that.
of the Quran is not an uncreated. It's not. I'm not.
I did
vesting
not say
attributes
that.
of God.
I'll repeat
That's
to you my argument again. Right? What I said was, the Quran says Allah is not like anything in his creation. Right? If Allah is not like anything in his creation, right, that also includes all of his attributes. If you're saying that your recitation of the Quran intercedes for you on the day of judgment,
Because of the
and it is the action that is speaking for you, then that means your recitation of the Quran is a mirror image of Allah's speech. In other words,
Where do you get that
your
interpretation?
created
That's
speech
superimposition.
is a mirror image of Allah's divine speech.
Right. I don't understand what's wrong with that. You're superimposing.
Is Allah like anything in his creation?
You're superimposing.
Answer that. I'm going to explain to you why it's wrong.
No.
Is
you're-
Allah like
here's-
anything in his
but
creation?
Here's the thing you gotta understand. You're superimposing the fact that if I repeat God's words, whatever I'm saying is divine.
No, I didn't say that.
Therefore,
No, I actually said it was created.
Therefore, because
I did
God
not
is
say that.
is nothing like His creation.
I did not say
the
that.
fact that the recitation is divine, therefore it
I
contradicts
did not
the fact
say that.
God is nothing
I
like.
did not
Isn't
say
your
that.
point?
No, you see, again, you haven't listened, so I'll repeat my point
I
again.
did listen, and I